Welcome to Great Minds with Lost&Found, the podcast that connects people and reimagines systems to improve mental health for youth and young adults. I'm your host, Joel Kaskinen. Lost&Found is a comprehensive nonprofit organization that aims to do more to eliminate suicide for youth and young adults in the United States. Now that you know who we are and what we're all about, let's get to the show. Welcome back to Great Minds with Lost&Found. I'm your host, Joel Kaskinen, and with me today is Melissa Renes, your new title. I'm going to forget it already. Dropping the ball.
Yeah, you should practice this.
Manager of Education and Operations. Did I get that correct?
Close. Program Manager for Education and Operations, yeah.
Okay. I went to say it and I was like, I should have prepared a little bit more. So Melissa is with us today. She is a employee of Lost&Found. You have been with us just about the same amount of time that I have.
October 21 is when I came on. And then I think it was program associate at that time, doing my practicum for my MSW. And then full-time about a year ago. May 2022, and then here now. And then I promoted or transitioned. That's the word I was looking for. Transitioned into that position of program manager in January of 23. So yeah.
So what she's saying is that she's had all of the roles within our organization in a very short time, and it's because we as an organization have evolved immensely, and the need for our work has been increased. And so, we're going to dive into all of that today, and we are going to see where this conversation takes us. But I want to start with a brief introduction of who you are, your background, what it is about this work that draws you in.
So my background, I have been in about nonprofits for about 20 years, a variety of different nonprofits working with vulnerable populations. Anything from teen moms to at risk of being homeless or runaway youth, rape and domestic abuse center. So through all of those, really working with mental health in general. All of those vulnerabilities also present challenges with mental health. And so really what drew me here is I have the opportunity to be very preventative rather than reactionary. And many of our services, which are all great services across the city and across the state, are very reactive because something's happened. And so this really was presented and I was like, this is really a way to be so preventative and be upstream. And so that really drew me to that as well. And so, and then as I got to be in the organization, I really just like teaching people about their mental health. And so it's really great. It fits well with my background. I have a bachelor's from Northern, and then I finished my master's in social work from Capella University. And I also have a social work associate license here in South Dakota. And so it really works well to grab all of those things and put them in one position that it's like you can do a little bit of everything. I get direct service, I get administrative, I get advocacy. Like it's really great. Like I'm corny, but it's really great. So
well, it works for your personality and your strengths too, like to do education because you have so much training and so much just a wealth of knowledge in everything really when it comes to the nonprofit space and to the resources and support structures that are available here in the state of South Dakota.
Right.
But then also the operational and the administrative piece helps us, as an organization keep on the mend as we are, growing rapidly and new challenges are facing every day, so it kind of helps you and helps us to have you in this role. So, let's talk about the overall situation of mental health, the ecosystem here in the state of South Dakota. As you know, suicide is the leading cause of death for our youth and young people in the state of South Dakota. And to ensure that we're doing the best that we can to prevent those deaths from happening, we have started using the CDC's 7 strategies for prevention as outlined in the Resource for Action document that they released a couple of years ago. Of those strategies, though, I think that we do a really great job with a couple of them in particular. And in your role with education, advocacy, operations stuff, specifically overseeing our student programs. I want to hear what exactly we're doing with our student programs to promote healthy connections, as that is the number one thing that our youth are seeing as a risk factor. Is if they are feeling isolated, they're feeling alone, they don't feel like they have this sense of belonging or people that they can trust. So how are we doing that through our student programs?
Yeah, so we have 3 student programs, and I get the privilege of overseeing and facilitating 2 of them. Our 3 programs are peer-to-peer mentorship, campus chapters, and then our Lost and Found advocates. And so I came on board for Lost and Found advocates. That's what I did when I first was there, and it created this curriculum to teach people about their mental health and where to find resources, and do so in a way that also promoted those connections. They're small cohorts, they're once a month education, and people from different campuses. So it's not just your own. You get to see like, oh, I'm not alone in this, and that there are other people who are struggling. It doesn't matter if it's on my campus or somewhere else campus. And so I get to do the advocates and then the chapters, and they work really well together. And the chapters are 100% student-led campus organizations. When we started this school year, we're just wrapping up the school year now. When we started the school year, we had 4. And so Augustana University, Dakota Wesleyan University, USD or University of South Dakota, and then South Dakota State University had established chapters. And we started Lost and Found based on college campuses and campus chapters. So all of our work has really blossomed from that concept. And so we had those four chapters, and those chapters, COVID took a real big hit for campus chapters and campus organizations across the board. So when we came on, we really wanted, or when I came on in May then, to do the chapters as well, how do we bolster all of this?
Yeah.
And so how do we get people engaged? What are we offering them to promote those connections? And after we've educated you on Lost and Found advocates, like, you can get connected and you can share that knowledge in those chapters. So really, while I'm bouncing back and forth, they all just interweave together really well. And it's exciting to see how they can interconnect. Look at a little play on connectedness. So yeah, it's exciting, and I really like my job. So you can tell, like, but yeah, we really promote those connections because they are small, especially through advocates, or those small cohorts. They're 5 to 10 people. They fit at a time that works for you. They're done virtually and with safe leaders, and they're all in there. And people have said, the feedback we've gotten from those advocates sessions are, I appreciate that they were small and this was a safe place that I could ask those questions, because I didn't feel like I could anywhere else. You don't want to be you don't want to feel stupid to people. You don't want to like ask a question that are really like, why are you asking that, or what is this?
Yeah.
And so it gave them the opportunity. And the leaders of that have all been Lost and Found staff. So again, using that knowledge, using that expertise, finding a way to incorporate that inclusivity in those small areas. So that's how we do that, really, advocates. And the topics that we cover there are mental health statistics. Like, why is this a problem? I've noticed with college students, if it's not really something they're working with or dealing with, they don't always see outside a bigger perspective. And so giving them some of those state statistics, some of those statistics about, this is how many people are dying by suicide. This is why this is.
Yeah.
This is how many people struggle with mental health. And they have found those statistics, 1, helpful, and 2, surprising. Like, wow, I didn't know that. And we do it in a way, like, we show them like the nationwide statistics, and we break it down to like, here's your college level statistics, and then here's your state statistics. Yeah. So then they really are seeing that. And then those chapters are using that same information and presenting it to those students who are attending those once a month meetings or activities that they're doing, like cookie decorating or yoga or journaling. Like, how do we use these things and these techniques in our everyday life? Like, here's why you should journal, and this is what we're going to provide one for you, and then this is what you can use in your daily life to help with your anxiety or help with those moments where you need to be a little more grounded. And the feedback we've gotten from those chapters as well are, again, small activities, welcoming. It was open, that we could ask questions. I wanted to be connected to something. I was looking for a support system, and that's what we're getting all amongst our programs. And so, chapters, we maybe don't have as much data, even though we've been around. So we really are priding ourselves that let's capture some of this, and we've done this now. And so it's exciting to see we're hitting the mark. They want that connection. So yeah.
Sweet. I'm just realizing that I probably should have prefaced with a brief overview of each of the programs, and you kind of got into that, but if we could just go back quick to share what with our listeners what each program does, because I know what they do, you know what they do, but our listeners might not. So what I just heard you say is that we have the 3 programs: the peer-to-peer mentorship program, the Lost and Found advocates, and the campus chapters. It sounds like the campus chapters are more of the social programming, the advocates is the education and training, and the peer-to-peer is that mentorship piece. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, will you just elaborate on each of those for our listeners, so that way
Yes.
they now that they know a little bit about how we're creating those connections, let's go back and just make sure that they know what the program is exactly.
That wasn't in your notes. That's the question you should ask first. And maybe I just didn't understand the question, but
No. I think I just asked it poorly.
It happens. So campus chapters are a full-fledged, like I said, 100% led student organization on their campus. They may be tied in with their student government. They may, they have bylaws, and this is what's going to happen, all those things. So they are a full-fledged campus organization, just as much as intramural sports on those campuses or things. And so those chapters meet at least once a month, either for an educational meeting or a business meeting, or for an event. The events are, like I said, anything from cookie decorating during Christmas time. One of them had yoga. I had a yoga instructor come in and just do basic yoga and breathing techniques. One of them had resources from the community come in and give their, this is what we do.
So kind of social elements, to the programming, but also focused on wellness.
Yeah.
Okay.
And education. So because each chapter has their own specific to the region resources on campus and off, because we know that stigma still happens very much on those college campuses. And college campuses, while they're doing great work at those campus counseling services, we do know that they're sometimes booked still. And so what are different resources in your community that you can use? What are your community mental health centers? Those kind of things. Plus, just because you're at a school this semester, you're going back home over the summer? Do you know how to access those when you go back? All of those things. So it's really giving you resources on campus as well as off campus. There's also an advisor for each of those campuses, and someone who is typically it's with their counseling center, and somebody who can provide some of those other triage things, I guess you could say. But if it's not somebody that's a counseling person on campus, they know where to find those resources.
Sure.
They are comprised of an executive board of about 5 people who plan or more steer some of those things, because the chapter really is a cohesive thing, and you should be and are tailoring their events to what the chapter members want to do and what they think is important in those. And then so we started that with 4, and we've now expanded by the end of this year to 5. So we've added the University of Minnesota Twin Cities. They started January of 23, so the last half of school. And so very exciting there. And then Lost and Found Advocates was a pilot program when I started, and we created it to be, at the time it was 6 sessions of 1 hour information. Like I said, those topics are coping skills and self-care and stress management or time management, boundaries, relationships, just a variety of things. And so from the feedback that we got from that first pilot, that was 6 months, once a month for an hour, at a time that was convenient for them, and virtual, so they didn't have to come to campus, they didn't have to do those things. We at the beginning of this fall, we condensed it to 4 sessions and did it for once a month for 4 sessions for the first semester, and then second semester started a new one. The other thing that we bolstered this time in advocates is really that advocacy piece. So you get all this education and all this knowledge in a very easy form.
It's digestible.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we don't. You go to a psychology class for school and they use all these $5 words and big things, and people are like, "What? How am I going to remember that?" And we break it down really easy, and do a lot of reflection and thought process and let people, like you said, digest it. And so, but one of the pieces that we bolstered was advocacy. So you have this education. How do I do that? And how do I advocate on my campus for myself and for others? And so they can finish it, and then they can decide if they want to do an advocacy project or not. If they want to do the advocacy project, that's great. But if they don't, they at least learn that advocacy is a spectrum, from anything to just using inclusive language to, helping a campaign of a politician that you think is somebody that could make great laws or things. It's a very wide spectrum, and there's things to do on there for what is your comfort level and what that looks like and how they can do. And so they really said that's helpful, because they all see like, oh, I have to do this in a really big grand way. It's not really it.
That's the mindset of our younger generation who's in college right now.
Right.
We see it, this innovative nature within them.
Yeah. The first year they did that, there's great examples of advocacy projects from on that spectrum. One was already in a roundtable discussion of a weekly group. And so that person just added mental health as their topic. And so since Lost and Found staff were on their campus that day, they invited us there. We just had there's only about 5 of them that were meeting all the time. And so we just had a small conversation. And then other ones had like a training night and a 5K and all of these things. So they're really a big spectrum, but you can do what you wanted to do. And so, I don't have all the great stats this time, but I had them over the weekend. But I want to say the first cohort was like 36 students. And then between these 2 cohorts, I think we've had about the same.
Okay,
so,
wow.
So those are the programs.
We love it.
Yeah.
All in all, we are working to promote healthy relationships and connections for our young people. And we're doing so by providing them with resources, with education and training, with the ability to recognize within themselves what is going on mentally, physically, emotionally, but also how to recognize that in others. We're doing really, really cool things there. Another way that we are working with our students to kind of administer or utilize the strategies of prevention are through teaching coping skills, resilience building, all of that's coming through these programs. But that is also that's helping build protective factors. Can you talk to us about that a little bit? Just like what kind of protective factors are we helping to make students realize that that is something that is helpful to them?
Right. So if you look at the protective factors and risk factors for risk factors would be increasing, the risk of suicide. Somehow there's way more of the risk factors than there are protective factors.
What?
Yeah, right. So it's very interesting there. And so some of those risk factors are a lack of connection, a lack of sense of being, hopelessness, potentially if someone else has died by suicide in their family, some loss, those kind of things. And so, and the list is bigger, but on the flip side of that, then those protective factors, are the things that help reduce those suicides. So the sense of
and lessen harm too.
Correct. Yeah. Yep. So getting that connection, getting a good support system, and it also understanding that coping skills are a way to do that and those kind of things. So they they kind of balance each other out. But I always thought it was funny how there's more risk factors than protective.
Well,
but
yeah.
but
Not
yeah,
funny, but
well,
yes.
right. You know, I was like, I was
Interesting.
writing these out the other day, and I was like, oh, there's like 7 bullet points, 8 bullet points are there, and then the CDC even breaks them out like individually and socially and community, and I was like, huh. Yeah, like you can have your individual risk factors,
Yeah,
and you can have your
totally.
community risk factors. And community risk factors are lack of access, messaging that does not, safely portray suicide and mental health and those kind of things. So I would encourage people really understanding that. I just presented to. I don't remember who I presented to, but they didn't know all the risk and protective factors either, and they vaguely had heard about it. And it's like, we really need to figure out how we can get more of those protective factors going. But the big ones, again, of those protective factors are the connection and the support systems and feeling like they belong. Like that sense of belonging is absolutely huge. And so when we ask people, why did you join the chapter? Why did you do these things? So you can even go to their events. It's campus wide, so you don't have to just be a member to go to these events. So if you just happen to see like, oh, they're gonna be doing game night, I can go, and so they can check that out. But most people said, I wanted a sense of connection. I wanted to meet a support system. So that absolutely is a protective factor, because if you feel hopeless and you feel like nobody's out there, the only way to really combat that is to be connected and get to a group. But it's hard. I will tell people for sure, like if it's going to be like, do I really want to step out there? But I would encourage them to do that anyway, because our people, one of the things we also asked on our end of the year survey was, were they opening and welcome? And all of them said yes. So I think they're doing great jobs to make sure people feel comfortable and part of that group there. So,
well, it's hard to make friends as an adult too, and especially when you're in this transition part of your life where you're going from being under the roof of your parents and guardians to being on your own on a college campus where you can be anyone you want to be, there's nothing holding you back. And so to put yourself out there can be incredibly scary, which is why we often see suicides spike in college age students. And that's why it's so important, in my belief, to have these types of programs that we offer.
Some of the interesting things that I have noticed as we've expanded advocates a little bit more, as well as chapters, is those transitions in college go just beyond the 18-year-old that's going from high school to a freshman. We have non-trad, non-traditional students. We have online students. We have students who are parents. There has been just a wide gamut of different transitions going on for people. And I think when the general public think of college, you really kind of just think of like, oh, well, you're going to college, you got it. You should know everything. Contrary to popular belief, the sky does not open at 18 and you know everything, and so, or even when you become a new parent, and now you're struggling and juggling college. Like, there are so many things that people are, this is hard for me to do. And while, not everybody in that campus might be a parent, you're still welcome there. The good thing about the chapters are, like I said, if you want to be intramural sports, you gotta be good at sports. SDSU has a Taylor Swift club. If you want to be in that club, you kind of got to like Taylor Swift. You know what I mean? Like, you have to have these specific interests or wants. And this is something that you don't have to be great at anything. Just come, just be a part of. And I think that's really what might be lacking in some of these groups. And so it's really just come check it out versus, I'm not great at basketball, I'm not going to go, or I'm not a sports person. You know what I mean?
No, that makes total sense though, because not everyone is going to engage in things that they don't feel comfortable in, or they don't have an interest in, or they don't feel like they're good at, you know? So to have a social and educational component of, programming on a college campus that's open to everyone and also helping to normalize these risk and protective factors and the conversations around mental health. I think it has to start somewhere, and if that's the place to start, then I think we're on the right track.
Right. We also that sense of self and responsibility, and so those executives and also the advocates who are doing advocacy, we're building leaders as well, and so
Yes, that's a good
they are
point.
gaining. I spent a lot of time with our chapter executives and those advocates who are doing projects. I spend a lot of time with all of them. Don't get me wrong. I thoroughly enjoy all my time that I work with students directly. Like they're just great. But those chapter executives are, we check in. We have once a time meetings, those kind of things. And so we are building those responsibilities of, do you know how to get somebody in for a training? Do you know how to talk with people? Do you know how, like, what does this relate to other people? And so it's been very beneficial for them as well, especially when they're doing their advocacy projects too of, okay, we'll use that last year when they were doing the 5K. What do you need? How do we do this? It was an awareness 5K, was free will donation, so it wasn't like a fundraiser per se, but it really built up those skills of, how do I plan an event? What do I do? Those kind of things. So really enhancing those protective skills as well of, I want to be a part of this because I'm learning different things.
Totally. Ugh, I love that. Let's move forward a little bit away from our programs and what they do and how they're, setting our students up for success a little bit more. And let's talk through, ways to consider solutions for mental health challenges among college students. So what are some challenges that we've faced in bringing these programs to college campuses? Let's start there.
Each college campus is their own identity and their own person, if you will. They all have their own different personalities. They have their own politics. They have their own just ecosystems, seems like, kind of thing. And so navigating those waters is always kind of a little like, oh, I can't do it here, but I can do that here. Or this works here, it doesn't work there. So really trying to not see those as barriers for stopping services. It's just being a little more creative of, okay, that works here, it doesn't. Like as we look into technical schools, like their class schedules are even different, and they're short amounts of time. And so it's really just more, okay, how does that work a little bit, kind of thing. So those are some of the challenges that we've noticed, that we've brought. I feel like COVID has helped with virtual, like how do we are located here in Sioux Falls. I know we have somebody in the Black Hills, and we have somebody in Brookings area, but how do we give that attention to all of those campuses?
Sure.
And so really making sure that the virtual options are helpful. We have to meet when students are available, I laugh because my job is not 8 to 5. It's very much, okay, I'm going to meet our monthly student advisory board meeting, which is the presidents of each of those clubs, meet at Monday night at 8 p.m. once a month.
Yeah.
You have to do it, kind of thing. And so,
Well, 'cause that's also part of, fostering success and creating connections and
Absolutely.
Providing a way for people to connect is by meeting them where they're at. And, a barrier to entry is not being flexible.
Right. Yeah. So those are some of the barriers that we've just had to think through a little bit of how do we make this, I don't say universal, but as easy as possible and less disruptive for students on those individual campuses.
Yeah, I love that. How do you feel that mental health education programs like ours bring us closer to our vision of a future with no suicide?
Especially for that younger generation. Now I sound really old, but the students today, your typical 18 to 24-year-olds, they are already talking about it in some ways. They have elevated that conversation extremely, but making sure that they're getting good information. So, and where are those resources? Because you're having that conversation, that's great, and you want to talk about it, but you have to have the right information and where can you go? So if you know someone is struggling, but you don't know how to help them, then that makes you feel helpless as well. And so it just kind of continues that cycle a little bit. So our education, while some of them might already be having those conversations on a very basic, it gives them better education and better resources. So, really fostering what they already have and really enhancing that for them. And then if they know those coping skills and those self-care and those resources, things can be more prevented. The point of all of our programs, all three, including mentors, is preventative. We don't want this to get to such a crisis that now you feel like suicide is the only option. So really being that preventative, giving good education resources so things don't escalate as much, or get to the crisis. It's fine if you're having a crisis, don't be wrong. But you want to make sure that you know where those resources are and how can we be more preventative so people are equipping themselves with, I don't have to get it to crisis mode.
Yeah. You just brought up a point that I want to kind of spend just a brief moment on. It's that our younger generations are talking about mental health, and they are very innovative. They're very entrepreneurial. They want to make change. They want to see a better future. How do you think that outside of educational programs like ours, outside of student programs, things like our digital guides, things like social media, things like grassroots movements that students are, creating on their own and of their own accord. How do you think that plays into all of this?
Sure. Yeah, so a variety of ways. For example, using the Let's Talk About Mental Health guide. So I can give you that booklet and it's a downloadable content and it's great stuff. But the advocates really go through that content. Like, okay, I've educated you on this, so now you can advocate or give that guide to someone else, and now you know how to use it. We're just providing better tools for them in that way. So, and our digital content on social media, it's very interesting. Social media ebbs and flows of what they're using and what it doesn't. Yep. And one of the questions I ask them, we always do a would you rather question as an icebreaker for advocates. And I ask them, would you rather give up social media or only watch the same movie for the rest of your life? I am so surprised at how many would say they'd give up social media for their vast movie collection, which to me surprises me. Because again, I'm in that era, you don't use all your social medias. Yeah. I have some people who don't have Facebook at all. I have some people that don't use Instagram at all. It's that's so interesting to me. Yeah. But it also tells me that sometimes they're not getting good information. And so when organizations like us or NAMI or American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, the helpline, 988, SAMHSA, all of these places, they can get good information still on the web, on the social media if they're looking for the right places. And so I feel like, again, just giving them the right tools and they'll hopefully prosper, you know what I mean? But just really getting them to the better places instead of, I don't even know what a crappy website example is right now.
No, but I feel you. I think it's just, we have to, again, meet people where they're at. Mm-hmm. And part of doing that is by finding them online. And, I think to your point earlier, COVID helped us meet people virtually. While, yes, it changed the way that we operated when talking about our student programs, but it has also allowed us to grow in major ways. I mean, our online and digital and virtual connections that we're creating with people, I don't want to say are more far-reaching than what we had been doing individually on campuses, but it's helped to elevate that.
Yeah. So I think while we have reached a lot more people on social media, and that is absolutely fantastic, they're getting the education, they're making those connections. I also, on the flip side, think that sometimes, depending on that person, they might sometimes need that face-to-face connection. Yeah, and so I think, how do we get those together? And I think when you do virtual things, making sure you're doing it in an appropriate manner as well. So many people, if you miss a cohort of advocates, have said, can you tape it? Can you how do I do this? And we don't, because we want people to know that this is you. So whatever you're saying, there's no video recording of if you asked a question that you think is dumb getting out somewhere. Like, no, we don't do that. We make sure that those are 5 to 10 people groups, so that way it's manageable virtually. It's not a webinar that you're attending and that you feel that you can't make. And so I think both of those go hand in hand, and you have to do it appropriately and in a manner that people are getting what they need, meeting them where they're at, kind of thing. And so, but also incorporating, like, here's where you can find more information on social media and those tools and things. So yeah, it's so vast. It's hard to talk about it in just like this little box of things, but yeah, it's a lot.
Totally. Well, I mean, anything involving college students is a lot. So I get it. Let's move on a little bit more here. With the podcast, with Great Minds, with a lot of the work that we are doing, we are thinking through systems, and we are thinking about how we can reimagine those systems to improve the mental health ecosystem in our state. So in thinking about that, how has our work on college campuses impacted the work that is happening across the state?
Sure.
That might be a big question.
It is a big question. And part of me wants to be like, it's way impacting, but I want to be able to back that up. I believe that, so the cliche things are, the students in the younger population is our future, obviously.
Yeah,
and so impacting them, and it seems like we're also hearing a lot at Lost and Found of employers need some of that education, some of that gatekeeper training. And so if you are teaching those business people, those caregivers of tomorrow, that will carry into their businesses as well. It's going to carry into their workplace. And so that impact, like, while we might not see it right now, is going to trickle down.
Sure.
It's going
That's
to have a ripple effect. Tangibly now, we use our data and research a lot, our department there in Lost and Found, about are we making the mark on that campus right now, using the campus resilience index, using just data that we gather, like at the end of the year, like, are we doing this, are we not, and using that to tweak what we need to make it, to enhance it. And so we know that the impact, of hitting the mark is there. They're getting promoted and they're getting connected to different things. And so that impact can be seen there. But I think that impact across the state, I also think that campus administration and faculty are noticing us a little bit more as well as Lost and Found, because those students are being that voice and that picture on campus as well. And so there's opportunities to bring things there. The interesting thing about Lost and Found is we try to be as least invasive to staff on campus as possible. How can we help? How can we teach Lost and Found? How can we do this? You know what I mean? Like, it's not meant to have another staff pile more on their caseload, kind of thing. So it really is showing, how do we all work together? So
in terms of working together and making an impact in the future for our state, I just want to make the point that you said, we don't have that data yet. It's new, but there's going to be that trickle down. And so, in the future, there's going to be much more of an impact than there is right now.
Sure.
To your point that you made earlier, these students, we're training them to be leaders. We're teaching them to be involved citizens and advocates for their future, for their health, for their families, for their peers. And so I just want to make sure that we're talking about that impact too, because they are the future generation, but being set up for success through programs like this ultimately will yield a better and bigger impact on the overall state, and the ecosystems and the communities that we're serving and that we're part of.
For sure. As we've looked at our past legislative session, there has been some really great student leaders that have come out of there. And so while it might not have been a student that I've worked with, they were getting that education and seeing those importance, and advocating for their campuses for that. And so in essence, they're a great example. Like they were getting that education, they're learning how to advocate, and they did it. And that in itself can be very difficult when you're standing up in front of legislators and trying to give why this is important. And they were very articulate in their points, and I was like, go you. But they're the ones, they're the face, they're the voice. We can say as much as we need to, but putting somebody that it's directly affecting in front of important people, 9 times better, kind of thing.
Absolutely.
And so those are probably maybe our future politicians as well.
Yeah.
So
I love it. I can't wait, honestly, for the future, the generations that we have been impacting and training and educating. When they are our age and older, I'm thrilled, because it does give me hope. The current world that we're living in is so dark and it is so volatile that I do have hope for these younger voices, because they are striving for change. I mean, they want so desperately to live in a world that is safer, that is healthier, that is more successful and more caring. So I'm thrilled. I do have hope that the work that we are doing does have the power to continue to uplift and provide sustainable outcomes of health, healthy ecosystems. Let's move forward into some just more fun questions. So if we had a magic wand that you were waving over the state of South Dakota, or not just the state of South Dakota, but our entire service map of services, not factoring any resources, this magic wand just will make all of the changes that we see necessary. What are we doing to improve the mental health ecosystem?
We are solving the mental health provider shortage that is across the nation. In our state, we are giving more money to our community mental health resources, our community mental health centers, who provide those low cost or free services, kind of thing. It's twofold: paying people good wages to do that job, as well as getting more people in to do that job, kind of thing. We are putting more providers in places versus just the virtual telehealth. Telehealth is great. Don't get me wrong. I love it. But having a little bit more of those providers in our rural areas as well would be helpful too.
Absolutely.
Again, promoting telehealth definitely provides service. But when you're meeting people where they're at, having different options for some of that would be super helpful and good for them.
A lot of our rural residents, our rural neighbors don't have the means to drive to Sioux Falls to get care. They don't have high-speed internet. They don't have, so they are already facing barriers.
Right.
So I think that's
we have, for people, there's 11 community mental health centers across the state doing a catchment for 66 counties. Wow. And so if you think about plug out for Three Rivers Mental Health Center up in that northwest corner, they are covering a very vast geographical area there.
Very rural.
Yeah, very rural. And sometimes, their internet and email is not great, and they're doing the best they can. And I hope that somehow they would get rewarded. If we had a magic wand, how do I reward these people for doing really hard work in a really hard place?
I love that.
I think sometimes people in a mental health profession or helping profession can get very downhearted at time. Like, am I making a difference? Am I not? And rural areas and farmers and ranchers, their suicide rates are growing as well. And so I'm sure that you can feel that if you're in there trying to help, you kind of just either tread in water or maybe bobbing underneath sometimes, and so giving the shout out to them that they would, just be recognized as well. That would be a great bibbity boppity boo that wand.
We don't talk about that reward piece often in our work too, because we're the selfless individuals that are working in nonprofit worlds, and we get into this work because we wants to make an impact and wants to make a change in our neighborhoods and in our communities and in our homes. And so that reward piece, I think, often gets left out when it comes to nonprofit work. And so I love the fact that you just brought that up, because so often we face the challenge of like, well, we are being paid low because people aren't going to put their money into nonprofits for the staff salaries. They're going to put the money into the nonprofits that are impacting and enacting change. And so to reward people in a way that maybe it's a salary, maybe it's not, maybe it's just recognition that like they're doing good work, I think is critical. And I think that's part of the reason why we face such burnout too.
Yeah, it's a lot of times we get asked asked the question, well, how many people did not die by suicide because of your services? I don't know that answer. And I won't ever be able to know that answer, because unless I individually surveyed every person that we've been in contact, like, hey, did you consider suicide and you didn't do it because of our, like, there's no way to capture that data, you know? And so you won't ever get that intrinsic, like, hey, I made such a difference, you know, kind of thing. And I'm okay with that. And most people have to come to terms with that too. It would be very interesting to see, like, because I educated you, did you, you know, reach out and get those services that you needed versus that? That won't ever happen. And we know that. And so you have to look for different joys and victories and rewards. And so one of those for me was sometimes I don't ever see students, like I didn't teach advocates this last fall semester. I had other staff, you know, we have people who want to do that, and that's great. But I still coordinate with those students. And I was at a conference and I had a couple of those students that had emailed me and they saw that Lost&Found was there, and they came up and they're like, hey, it's so great to put a face with a name. And I was like, right, I got it. You know what I mean? Like, it was, you made that connection somehow that they really wanted to come up and say, hey, you know, I just want to put a name with a face kind of thing. So those are some of those little joys that you have to get. Like, apparently we were making a difference. Why else would they even want to come to our table and acknowledge, you know? So thinking of those little rewards and those little joys, it makes a big difference sometimes for people. So you got to look for those little ones.
You have to look for the small wins in the work that we do, because otherwise we will not be well, because it's heavy work. It's hard work. So, well, thanks so much for sharing. As we round things out here today, totally off topic. Maybe it's not. I don't know. You can decide how you want to answer. But what is one thing that you've learned throughout your many years of work in the nonprofit world, or just as a human that has been living on this planet? What is something that you've learned that you wish everyone knew?
I wish everybody knew a little bit of humility and was not as snarky about things and have a backsided comment for some things, because they don't know what people are struggling with. And I will admit, in my 20 years, you know, you come in pretty naive and you're thinking, you have your thoughts, and then now it's very intentional of, I don't know, like you see somebody walking down the street who's walking maybe a little with difficulty, you know, and maybe you just think that there are, like, many people are like, oh, they're just drunk, or they're on drugs. Well, you don't know that. You know what I mean? You don't know if it's a medical problem. If they are drunk or have a substance use, that's an issue for them. And we shouldn't make fun of that, you know? And so really, again, that cliche of everybody's fighting a battle you don't know anything about.
Yes.
Like, do I need to comment about how that person is walking down the street?
Also, how is that making any impact on your life?
Other than saying, I hope that they are getting the help they need.
Yeah.
And wishing well for them. So it's taken a long time for me just to kind of like, okay, this is the mindset I need to have anymore. Instead of, it's much easier to think that instead of judge people. And then hopefully, you know, passing it along to coworkers and friends and things like that, you know, kind of thing of just, I'm not seeing a big picture here. I don't know that person's life. So, okay, let that go. You know, like humility and just, you don't know what they're going through.
Right.
Like, do I really need to comment about it? Do I really need to like make a joke about it? But people still do. And so that's probably the piece of that I would wish people would just realize before they talked. So.
Yeah. I love it. Last thing for us, is there anything that you'd like to add that we maybe didn't discuss today, or a little nugget of wisdom that you want to share?
Nugget of wisdom. You know, working with students, I came into this, I had not worked on college campuses and higher education, and working with those students have been so refreshing. It was kind of, I'm like, okay, this is a little weird, but so super refreshing. I'm excited for next fall. I think they're ready for next fall. We have some really great student leaders, and I'm very appreciative of them.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'm excited. They get me. I will rattle off about them because it's exciting.
Yeah.
So.
Now, to that point, I would like to just give you a shout out and an acknowledgement that the students that you've worked with, at least this year, I have, at all of the last couple of events that I've attended, have nothing but positive things to say about you, and they enjoy our programs. And I think that is because you helped to initiate and reevaluate what our programs look like and how they're administered, and what is actually going to make the most impact on them personally, but also in terms of them as being part of our community. So yeah, I just think that we're onto something, and I think you're onto something, and the students that we're working with are recognizing that. So
Yeah, thanks. I paid them to tell how this. No, they are really great. They're such
good.
great
They're good.
student leaders. They're easy to work with because they are such great student leaders, and so I'm super excited. I think they're excited for next year, and so. Yeah, they're willing to even work through the summer on some things. So
Which is
that
wild.
means, I've either helped them do something or whatever. But yeah, they're really excited. So, but thank you for saying that. That's very nice to hear. So.
Yeah. Well, I think that about does it for the day, but thank you so much for sharing what it is that you do and how we are making an impact on the lives of our students, and then ultimately in the lives of the people in our communities. So I appreciate you taking the time out of your afternoon to share with our listeners kind of what it is that you're doing, and the work that we do with our students. And if they have any questions, how can they learn more about our programs?
Sure. Well, our website is resilienttoday.org, and on that page are our staff bios and contact us. Our website, and I tell people this, and I tell students, really user friendly. Like, all of our information's on there, and so I tell them, if you don't remember this, go to our website. And so on the website, you can hit up the chapters information or advocates, and that information will come to me if they have other questions. My email is mrenes@resilienttoday.org. You can shoot me an email just directly if you have questions about kind of anything. I mean, our chapter stuff, we also provide, mental health first aid trainings, youth mental health first aid trainings, QPR, a variety of different things in the community, not just on campus. And we're happy to have conversations with anybody and see how we can either collaborate or what's needed, or at least just start conversations if we're not in a spot that we can do that yet, but always willing to start a conversation.
Heck yeah, we've got to start somewhere, and if that's with a conversation, we're gonna do it. So thanks again so much. I appreciate it. And hey, listeners, I hope that you got something out of this, and until next time, stay well. Thanks so much for listening. Remember to subscribe, rate, and review Great Minds wherever you listen to your podcasts. For more information about Lost and Found, go to resilienttoday.org. That's RESILIENTTODAY.org. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube @Resilient Today. Until next time, do more and stay well.